Hey, what is up guys? So we are going to be doing a deck profile on the new Cyber Dragon deck that I played a few days ago, and with the structure deck coming out relatively soon, I figured I'd give you guys a build that you guys can test around, have some fun with, and definitely make some changes in the future if you'd like to. I think we definitely have some room for improvements on this deck. Like I said, I played it a few times and I had some fun with it, but it is generally going to be an OTK deck, and it's not very combo heavy. A lot of things are very cookie cutter. You basically go for your go-to guy over here and you usually just end up OTKing. Now there's a lot of different builds that you can actually use in this deck to OTK your opponent, but I like this build a little bit better simply because it has a better matchup against dragons. Dragons are pretty much the predominant deck of this format, even in last format, but what it comes down to is this card into Draco Sack tokens equals game over, especially when you use Power Bond with it. You just gotta hope that they don't have something to stop you. Obviously something like a Swift Scarecrow, at certain times can also ruin you when you go for something like this. But usually when you go for the Cyber End Dragon, they can't do anything about it, which is unfortunate for them. But anyways, let's go ahead and get started with the deck profile. I'll explain all the different versions of the deck that you can play, and I'll explain all the tech choices and all that good stuff, and some of the brief combos and things that you can do in this deck. So first off, we got our big daddy over here, BLS. He's just too good not to play. And I know there's only 3 darks in the main deck, but trust me guys, you're going to make this card a lot, especially in mirror match. You will be making this card quite often because you don't really want to leave this card with only 400 attack on board. There's some times where you just don't want to get Crimson Blader, or there's a lot of things that you just don't want to run into. So you'll be making this card quite often. Like I said, in mirror match it comes out all the time. So first off, after BLS we got 3 Cyber Dragons. It is a Cyber Dragon deck, so I mean there's no reason why you wouldn't want to play 3 of these guys. And a lot of these cards you'll see that they count as Cyber Dragon on the field or in the graveyard as well. So we'll get into why that actually matters a little bit later on. So next up we have 2 Cyber Dragon Drays. This card actually combos very well with Cyber Network. You can actually play more of them, and you can play more Cyber Networks if you actually want to. But the way I've designed this deck is to be a little bit more faster. Cyber Network is more of a comeback card, and it's a little bit of a slower card because it takes a few turns. And usually with this deck, you want to be OTKing by turn 3, I would say, or maybe at most maybe turn 5. But this card is definitely, like I said, a little bit of a slower card. Plus, when you draw multiple Drays, you just run out of good targets to actually use with Cyber Network. Next up we play Honest because, like I said, everything's light in the deck pretty much, and Honest is a pretty good card, especially with this guy over here. Next up, 1 Proto Cyber Dragon. I don't like this card that much. It counts as Cyber Dragon while it's face up on the field, so you can use things like Pike if you want to build that build, but it's really good in mirror match. If you're playing mirror match, definitely play more of the Proto Cyber Dragons because you'll be making Chimera Tech very often. Next up, 2 Tour Guides, just because it allows you to stall, allows you to make things to kind of reset stuff with with Cyber Network, and if you happen to banish stuff, it's just a good card. I really do like Tour Guide because sometimes in this deck, when you don't open up with Cyber Dragon Core, you have or even Cyber Valley, sometimes you have an awkward hand and you just have too many spells. You can have all the back row hate, but then you just don't happen to have the monsters to keep yourself alive. And I found myself, doing that. You could definitely opt to play, cards like Threatening Roar if you want to do so. But I feel like, these cards are a little bit slower. I'd rather just, try to push for game as quickly as possible. Next up, triple Cyber Dragon Cores. This card absolutely makes the deck ridiculously good. This is what makes the deck. This card basically is your Stratos that searches out another card which searches out this card again. So it has this little mini engine, so when this card is normal summon, you can add 1 Cyber or Cybernetic spell slash trap card from your deck to your hand. You can add this if you really want to. I really don't like this card too much. Originally I thought this card was really good, but you'll notice that you'll exhaust a lot of your resources really quick if you happen to abuse Cyber Network. And the thing is, you don't really need this card because you could just OTK your opponent relatively quick with things like Power Bond. What's awesome with this card, it basically also searches out a Miracle Fusion, which is really good. So this card basically searches out this card over here, and this card basically searches out your entire deck with the exception of BLS, Tour Guide, Honest, and Birdman. So this card is it's really, really too good. So as long as there's a Cyber Dragon in your graveyard, remember some of these cards do also count as Cyber Dragon in the graveyard. So you want to search out this card most of the time, and then this card allows you to add 1 Light Machine monster from your deck to your hand. So Reinforcement Army, that needs to be at 1, but this card, no problem. Go ahead and put it at 3, right? Eventually this card might get hit, depending if the deck does well, and we'll have to see if this deck actually gets more support, because as of right now, it really only has 1 play. It's like an OTK-oriented deck. But yeah, like I said, search out this card with it, and it has another effect that you can target 1 Light Machine monster in your graveyard and shuffle it into the deck. You usually won't use that effect, but if there are 3 more Cyber Dragons, you can activate both of the effects, so it's good to recycle some of the cards. So next up we have 3 Cyber Valleys. Now you can definitely play Mind Control. Mind Control plus Cyber Valley is a fantastic combo in the game because you can banish itself and the other card, and then you can draw more cards. It also combos with Machine Duplication. Same thing with Cyber Dragon Core. If you Machine Duplication Cyber Dragon Core, you can special summon 2 Cyber Dragons, which is really good. You can open up into number 61. I actually will make that version of the deck, but the way I look at it is that allows you to OTK, and you have so many different ways to OTK in the deck, and it's not really that necessary. It definitely is good, guys, don't get me wrong, it definitely is a way to play the deck, but it only really works off of one monster. I mean, it works off Cyber Valley if you are going to be playing Cyber Valley, which is originally what actually caused me to put Cyber Valley, but the way I've been testing the deck, like, Power Bond's all you need. This card, like, it just wins games on its own. But, you know, it can also make you lose games also. But yeah, Cyber Valley, it just helps you stall, lets you draw a card, and, you know, puts in work with return. If you return for multiple Cyber Valleys and you draw a bunch of cards, you're going to OTK that turn, unless they have a Swift Scarecrow, Battlefit, or something like that. So next up, we have 3 Power Bonds. This is what usually starts up the OTK, or it ends up OTKing yourself, which can happen at some times, because during the end phase of this turn, the player who activated this card takes damage equal to the original attack of the monster at the time it was summoned. So usually that ends up being 5,600 when you summon a Cyber Twin Dragon. This is usually the card that you go for, but if you play against Elemental Dragons, make this card against like a Draco Sack token, or if you're playing any deck that makes tokens, this card has piercing damage and it will have 8,000 attacks, so that's enough to make it game. But if Power Bond doesn't go through, yeah, sometimes it can hurt you and you end up losing to that. Next up, 3 Cyber Repair Plant, which we briefly talked about. It's just a card that, you know, it's just pretty good not to play 3 of. Yeah, there's no reason why you wouldn't want to play 3 of, is what I should have said. But next up, because this is an OTK-oriented deck, Triple Night Beam is pretty self-explanatory. Next up, 2 Duality, because sometimes you have a slow hand, you have this to open up with. You open up with Cyber Dragon, they have nothing, you can't summon it. So 2 Duality, I think is sufficient in this deck. Next up, 3 MSC, it's an OTK deck. This card is like the king of sacking right here. This is what makes it so you can just, you know, sack your opponent really hard. This card is OP. Like, it really needs to be banned. There are so many times where you just attack, okay, damage that, library roll, you lose. Like, you can get this monster up to 5,600 already, and then you can, you know, double it. Like, it's absolutely crazy. And then I just tackle 1 Lance because it's like, you know what, why not? Lance is a pretty good card. If you definitely want to, Mind Control is a very good option with Cyber Valley. Next up, 3 My Body Shield. I don't like to run into other cards, but if you drop this card and you also drop a Power Bond and they Battle Fade or Swift Scarecrow, you usually end up losing, but, you know, that's okay, as long as your monster goes through. Originally I was playing more Lance, but I figured, nah, My Body Shield, it covers a lot more stuff, because there are times where you might drop something like a Cyber Twin Dragon and you attack over 2 things, and during the end phase you'll be taking a lot of damage, because you still have the monster, though, which is good. So yeah, it's during the end phase of this turn, the player who summoned or activated this card takes equal damage to the original attack of the monster. So the monster doesn't die, it doesn't like go away or anything like that. It's just you take a bunch of damage, and then the only thing they can really do to Cyber Twin Dragon that has, you know, absurd amounts of attack, because it doesn't, let's see, it gains equal attack to its original attack, and that is a permanent effect. So usually what you want to do is, after you activate Power Bond, let's say you just attack over 2 monsters, you don't make it game, and you're still going to have a huge monster. Like I said, this card will be at 5,600. They can't really do anything to it, other than like maybe like Dark Hole. So I was like, you know, My Body Shield, not too bad. Like I said, you might take too much damage to the point where it won't be too viable, but there are times where it does still work. And then I play 3 Cybernetic Fusion support, so this definitely allows you to, it's basically Miracle Fusion, but you still have to activate Power Bond. Like, this card doesn't work on its own. You have to, you get this card for free anyway, so it doesn't really matter, but it is quick play. I wish this card was also quick play. That would definitely make the deck a lot better, but you activate this card, then you can activate Power Bond, and it works. It's pretty nasty. And then 1 return just to sack your opponent really hard, and then just 1 attack, Cyber Network. It's not really needed, to be honest, in the deck, because, like I said, you're running out of resources, and you want to OTK as quickly as possible. And this card is definitely a different way you can play the deck, and it's a little bit slower, but what it comes down to is you're going to be XYZing, and you can do a lot more shenanigans with this card. And it's not a bad card, like I said, at all, but it's just a little bit too slow for me. As far as the extra deck, I recommend you guys play this. Like I said, it works against Elemental Dragons pretty well, or anything that just has tokens. I guess Mecha Phantom Beast, because, you know, their tokens are there, so you can just OTK them by attacking them once with that. Then definitely put in 2 Cyber Twin Dragons. I know I'm only playing 2 of the Miracle Fusions, but like I said, you have to have this card in order for this card to work anyways, and you get to search this card, so I feel like 2 is sufficient. But definitely 3 Power Bond, because that's what is used most of the time when you actually win duels. Put in more of these. This card is really good, especially if you get matched up against Mirror Match, or if you play against Karakuri's, or even against, anything that brings out Draco Sack. You can just make this card. Next, I'll play one Army Arm just because, I can just go ahead and BLS Army Arm someone and make it game also. Originally, I was doing more Cyber Network, so there is definitely room. If you really want to, you can play stuff like Crimson Blade. You can still make it in this deck relatively easy. The reason why I don't actually play any of the synchros like Stardust Dragon and all that stuff is because usually I go for a game most of the time when I'm going for my big plays anyways, and Crimson Blade is more of a card where you want to stun your opponent, and if I'm going to be making something, I usually just want to go for a game anyway, so that's why there's not really any synchros other than Army Arm just to make it an OTK deck. There is Cyber Nova Dragon, so you can definitely make this, but most of the time I don't really feel it's necessary because Power Bond makes it game anyways, but it's definitely not a bad card. Then I just have some generic XYZs, and because this card doesn't really do anything on the board, I mean, if this card does survive, you can keep it alive with Cyber Network plus banishing a Dre to make it so protect this card. You can definitely make a Gachi with it, it's not bad. It lets you stall a little bit. As far as other cards, you can definitely play cards like, Overload Fusion if you really want to. You can play more Proto Cyber Dragons, especially Mirror Match, it's good. I mentioned before, Machine Dupe is a different way to play the deck so you can OTK. I actually probably will make a build with this just because it's kind of fun, and I actually didn't record any because I didn't know if it would work or not. And there's also the Pike build, because like I said, some of these cards count as Cyber Dragon in the graveyard as well, so that allows you to just equip Pike and then have absurd amounts of attack. I also did it's basically the same idea of the Harpy version of the Pike, so I'll put a link down below in the description box if you guys want to check out the Harpy build. But basically what it comes down to is, since they are treated on the field or in the graveyard as the same name, you can get up the monster up to absurd amounts of attack and just one-hit OTK them. Next up, you can play Fusion Gate if you want to just banish your stuff and then return combos very well with it. You can also play cards like Threatening Roar, Decree is obviously not bad in here, and then DNA Surgery if you really want to also. The reason why I don't play Decree is because I want cards that are faster, I just go for game as quickly as possible. DNA Surgery is actually really trolly because all you need is Cyber Dragon, or anything that just counts as Cyber Dragon, and you contact with their entire field. It's pretty trolly, but like I said, it's a trap card, so it's a little bit slower, but this card is actually really good. I was thinking about actually making a ZW build of this deck. Perhaps in the future, I think it'd be kind of fun just to make a ZW version of this deck, but I'll have to put in things like Instant Fusion, Summoner Monk, and I think the deck can definitely take off because obviously you have your special summoning with this. I just wish that there was a way to special summon Cyber Dragon Core a lot easier from the deck or something like that. Who knows, maybe in the future I'll be able to do that. But Cyber Dragon Core and this card really is what makes the deck. So if you're actually interested in building this deck, I highly recommend you guys to play triple Cyber Dragon Core and triple Cyber Repair Plant. Everything else is just totally optional. Like I said, I think that we can actually improve this deck, so if you guys have any suggestions for this deck, hey, let me know and we'll test it out and see how these other suggestions go in the future. And like I said, guys, I'll be doing more versions of this deck, and I think Machine Dupe will be pretty fun with some different versions. I could make it a number 61 turbo if I wanted to. But anyways, thanks for watching, guys. Have a great day. Asian Eyes out.